So Dean, I've still got 8:59, so when you're ready for 9, we are ready to go.
It's 9 o'clock by my computer time. Welcome everyone. We're in session for a regular council meeting. We have both open meetings and closed meetings this morning, so we will be shifting between screens. We have an agenda before us and a package that has been read and distributed on Thursday. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda. Lisa.
To approve.
So I have something I would like to see added, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So council received, I think it was yesterday, a letter from 20 of the 24 landowners in South Exshaw. And it is in the form of a complaint, but I don't understand the process for it. So I would like to see that letter added to the information portion of this agenda. And then administration can probably help me understand the process for something like that, because I think that's the first time I ever saw one of those.
Okay. I'm going to try to help you out with the process, Paul. I'm going to resist adding it to the package. And the reason is that this is verging on a petition with the signatures. There's some question as to FOIP as I read it last. And the document should come to the municipal corporation, in other words, the municipal secretary, and be received at that level before it ever comes into this package. You have to be especially careful with petitions because they usually pit one set of privileges and rights against other privileges and rights, and you wouldn't want to be out of process and show bias.
So, Mr. Chair, I was not asking to have the signatures. There's 2 pages of signatures added, just the actual letter itself, so that I can understand the process.
Yeah, well, the process, as I understand it, is let it come before council.
I'm asking that the letter go before council right now.
And I'm asking council to leave it to process and allow it to come to the corporation, the municipal secretary, and be managed as all other communications are.
I disagree respectfully, Mr. Chair. And I believe it is up to administration to explain the process, because
I'm actually running, Paul, I'm actually running the meeting, so I'm explaining the process to you. Rob, if you want to comment, you can go ahead. Oh, can't hear you, Rob.
The document was received last night. I think it was around 6:30 p.m. As Councillor Ryan has pointed out, there's a number of signatures that go along with the request. Administration can take it as a complaint, and we can look into it. But there are a lot of things that they're requesting in this, which goes beyond anything that administration can handle up beyond signage. There is policy changes and land use bylaw changes being requested in this letter.
Okay. I'm going to go to all councillors now and see what their point of view is on the request of Paul Ryan.
I'm not looking for any decisions, Mr. Chair. I'm looking for a process explanation.
Eric?
Yeah, thank you. I haven't seen the letter. It may be in my email. I haven't checked my email since 6 o'clock last night, but I'm reluctant to get something in print on a council meeting with 12 hours notice or 15 hours notice. So I'm with you, Dean. I'm thinking that it's a bit premature to jump to that stage yet. May well get there, but not today. That's my thoughts.
I'm polling for position of council. Lisa?
Yeah, I guess I am also a little reluctant. It might be best to present the question and inquiries of administration, maybe. But just with the timing of receiving the letter and administration not having received it before end of day yesterday, I I think it would be, I don't know. I don't think it would be in our best interest to just walk it on. But I understand where Paul's coming from with wanting to understand the process, though. So there might be a way to ask questions about the process without including the letter that hasn't officially been received yet.
Paul Clark.
I think Lisa said it for me too. It's something that I haven't read, and I would prefer that we got some form of direction from administration on that. So,
Administration, last comments?
Sure, you can ask questions about administration, about process. I mean, I've read it a couple of times, but there's just a lot of things here that would have to be investigated through bylaw services and the planning department as well, to come back and give a recommendation back to council on this. We can deal with signage. I do know that Reeve Cooper, you were also there with Councillor Ryan last Thursday talking to residents about some of the issues that are raised in this letter. We can certainly look at that from administration's point as a complaint. There are some things we can do, obviously, as far as putting signage up, obviously for emergency vehicles and safety. But some of the things in here for blocking commercial access to that property is beyond the scope of administration.
So Paul, I'll give you room for last comments before we move on.
Oh, I'll just ask my questions during questions of administration, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillors with additions? Administration?
Yeah, I have one. Under closed session, I just want to ask about the annexation process with the summer village of Ghost Lake.
Okay, I have to write that down. Just give me a minute. Okay, and I have two. One is contractual. It involves the CAO's evaluation. And the other one is Biosphere. I have a letter from Biosphere, and it deals with donations and changes in governance. And I think council needs to discuss that internally. Calling for approval of an amended agenda at this point. Lisa? Calling the question, all in favor? I can see all hands now, by the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We have an agenda. We're moving forward in it to the minutes. We have the June 8th minutes, regular council meeting. Please, any edits or omissions, clarifications? To my studious readers, which you are. Okay, not seeing any. Motion to approve as presented. Yeah, Paul Ryan. Oh, sorry. I don't know who's first.
Lisa.
Okay, Lisa. When you make noise in the background, your picture comes up here, dominant. So, Lisa, have you got the motion? Okay. Calling the question. All in favor? As approved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Minutes previously circulated. That one usually belongs to Paul
Sure,
Ryan.
yeah. Sure, I'll move that we acknowledge those minutes were circulated.
No, acknowledge the minutes. Calling the question. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we're moving on to councillors' reports, which we usually forego. Is there any concern about that? Not hearing any. We'll go to business arising from the minutes, and I have none. Delegations, I have none. And unfinished business is the groundwater study for the Hamlet of Exshaw. It's on page 6. It's a lengthy document. And Rob, I believe that this is your report. Oh, can't hear you, Rob.
Thank you, Reeve Cooper. Before I start, under the recommendations section, Councillor Roswell caught this yesterday. It uses the term terms of reference. That sentence is used. It should be a request for proposals under item 2 recommendation. and now I'll start my presentation.
Okay,
As you recall, back in March, McElhaney had submitted a technical memo summarizing the recommendations that were contained in their November 2020 Physical Hydrological Assessment Report. And those recommendations were intended to provide a better understanding of the causes and mechanisms of water table rise and obviously groundwater flooding in the hamlet. On April 13th, Council directed administration to prepare terms of reference for the review of the analysis of the proposed McElhaney technical memo and prepare a work plan using the recommendations and an estimate of related costs to undertake that work. Administration went through it and reviewed the document, which was the technical memo from McElhaney. We're actually proposing, rather than a terms of reference, that it should be an RFP, request for proposal. And we have prepared that document, which is enclosed in the staff report. The RFP requires the proponent to analyze and evaluate the McElhaney documents as per Council's direction, to prepare a proposal that will outline the required field investigations, data analysis, required research, and the duration of the project to undertake the Exshaw groundwater study. The proponents will be investigating the causes of high groundwater flooding in Exshaw and the influence of storm events, snowpack, creeks, and the Bow River on the local aquifer. So in a nutshell, that's what we're requesting in the RFP. To let you know, administration has retained Morrison Hirschfield. They are a company which the MD uses for engineering purposes. I've used them with operations of Mr. Luca before. And there's a hydrogeologist from Whitehorse who has reviewed the RFP and provided some guidance in the wording to use. And so they have been useful, very useful in giving us advice. Also, you will note that in the actual RFP, they are referenced in there as providing technical assistance to administration during the review of the RFP proposals that are submitted and received, the recommendation to which council should select the successful proponent, as well as going through the process to provide technical advice as the project goes through its length of time, its duration.
okay. Now, before we go into discussion, Rob, your report asks for 3 recommendations. I will be dealing with them separately. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. Floor is open to recommendation 1.
Mr. Chairman, before that, can I ask about the content of the RFP?
Oh, yes, of course, yeah.
Rob, I did not hear the effective rainfall and snowpack occurring at the same time. As a matter of fact, I didn't hear anything about rainfall in there, and it's my belief that that was the major problem from last year.
Snowpack is mentioned, and I had the influence of storm events. Do you want to put rainfall as different than a storm event? Because it is in the RFP.
Okay, thank you. No, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm allowing general comments at this point, and then we'll go into recommendation 1. Lisa?
Yeah, okay. I would like to see something added under 4.4 summary of deliverables and project completion.
Can you give me a page number, Lisa?
Yeah, it's page 16 of the package.
Okay, and just go back to your reference point again.
4.4.
Yeah.
Summary of deliverables. I would like to add an additional bullet point there that says something to the effect of be available to answer questions of council. And
So is that different than the last bullet, Lisa?
Final presentation to council?
Yeah.
I would say so.
Okay, so can you explain the difference?
A presentation to council doesn't say that they're going to be available to answer questions. And just considering what's happened in the past half year here, I would like to very specifically make sure we're going to be able to ask questions and get answers.
Okay, Rob?
Councillor Oswald, would you have the amendment say final presentation to council and a question and answer session? Or are you thinking this would come after the presentation, a day or a week after the presentation, that you could ask questions again?
I would like to see that there be availability for both. So questions after the presentation, but if council comes up with more questions after the presentation has had time to sink in, that they would also be willing to answer those questions shortly after the presentation.
Okay, Paul Ryan?
Yeah, I think what Councillor Roosevelt is trying to do here is ensure that we don't end up like we did before with the consultant just refusing to answer questions. So, and, you know, there was, they'd answer questions in secret, but not in public. So I would suggest an additional bullet is be available to answer questions of council in a public session.
I would be happy with that wording. And then to complete that thought, I think it should also be added to 4.5 project completion on page 17, where the final sentence is the proponent will be required to make a final presentation to council. And if you include the same phrase that Paul just made to the end of that sentence, I think we would have our T's crossed.
On a page. What is the addition? Just read it back to me, Paul, whatever you said.
So it's Lisa's on page 17 now, 4.5.
Yeah,
so currently it reads the proponent will be required to make a final presentation to council. And then I think you could just final presentation to council, comma, and be available to answer questions of council in a public session.
Okay, Rob?
Well, they would be available to answer, they would be available to answer questions in the public session. What I'm hearing is, what if they were a week after, or 2 weeks after, or a month after, they could come back and answer questions. I would surely hope that once the study is done, that we have a lot more information in which to move forward. But if you want to put that in, that's fine. They're going to ask, there's going to be a Q&A anyway required for the final present to council. I would put that in there regardless, and maybe you can keep your other questions in there for after, because what you're asking are two different processes. One, a presentation with Q&A for council, and a second one, be able to come back and answer questions in a public session.
Yes, well, I would have expected that to occur with the last bunch of engineering work that was done on that, but that did not occur. So I believe it's important to specify, we don't need to specify the time that they do it, but just that as a part of this contract, that they will come back and answer questions of council in a public session. It could be a week later, you're right. It could be 2 weeks later. There could be more information come to the surface after their presentation to council that wasn't available earlier, as is what happened with the last work that was done. So I don't know that you need to specify the time, but I think we had better specify the fact that they are required to answer questions of council in a public session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I understand that clearly as an amendment. Yes. All right. Any other comments from either Eric or Paul Clark?
I have another comment, actually.
Okay. Yes, Lisa.
Thank you. On page 13, under the project, I guess the beginning of the second paragraph, it says proponents will be required to review the documents submitted by McElhaney as part of the previous groundwater assessment in Exshaw. Should we be limiting this report to only the documents submitted by McElhaney? We also have information sent to us from Golder and BGC. I know they're not all specifically related to, I guess, the 20 or East I guess they are specifically related, but I think they could all contain pertinent information that should be reviewed by a like when a groundwater assessment is being completed. I don't think we should limit the scope of information that a hydrologist would be looking at.
You are on page 16, are you not, Lisa?
13.
Predominantly?
It's on 13.
13.
Okay.
Through the chair, to Councillor Roswell, if you turn to page 15, supporting documentation, that's the listing of all the documents that the proponents can access when putting together the report. The direction from council was to review the recommendations that were contained in the McElhaney report, but everything I've got here under supporting documentation is something that has to be considered by the proponents.
And do you have the assessment from BGC in here?
The BGC assessment? No.
BGC assessment was on Jura Creek and Jura Creek mitigations.
Yeah, I understand that, but it also referenced the groundwater area in Exshaw. So so these are supported documentations that they must review and use, but we're not saying that they can't go outside of this and use anything else that they are able to find.
Absolutely. This doesn't limit them.
Okay.
If you wish to put in the BGC third-party review, you certainly can. It's up to the proponents when they go through to look at all this documentation, which does go back actually to 2012. Look at information. So when they make their submission, that they're going fully knowledgeable of the information that is available.
Have we got the Golder response to the BGC review? Is that in the list? I can't remember. I don't want to read it now.
It looks
No,
like
the design is there. Golder's design for Exshaw Creek and Jura Creek are already on there. So it would be very easy to put in a BCG review of Golder design, because if you're going to have them review the Golder design and we hired an engineering firm to review it, then that should be one of the documents that they're required to consider. They'll decide what to give weight to.
It should be in tandem with both reports. So if one's a review and the other's a response to a review, they neither should be eliminated.
Yeah, I just think everything that has been reviewed, worked on, any technical memos in the last year and a half that has anything to do with groundwater should be in that list.
Yeah.
I'm
Anything
tired
that
of adding
we-
another bullet.
Rob, any concerns?
Nope. You can throw
Other councillors, any concerns?
Just a comment, somebody taking on a study like this that would not, in my opinion, be constrained by what we gave him. They would probably do some form of a literature search as part of this project, just to make sure that they aren't missing some other reports that have done maybe by another party. Maybe Three Sisters did some kind of a review. I don't know, but I'm content the way it is, but I'm just telling you what I believe that the mechanism would be when they took on a project like this.
I'm going to support the amendments from the standpoint that I believe all the previous studies should be informing this study. I don't want any limits to what can be considered, providing that the specialists have identified that as relevant information. So I don't know why we did it. Okay. Any other things, Lisa? I hadn't expected the last one, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. That was That was all I had for my notes.
Okay, any others? Rob?
Yeah, under the second last bullet on page 16, that's the top page, that's dealing with those reference materials. We have a bullet that says Golder Associates Geotechnical Report from Piezometer Installations. There are actually 2 reports that we've received. That was a placeholder. So there are 2 documents or 2 reports from Golder, one for the piezometer installation for Exshaw Creek, and the other one's piezometer installation for Jura. So I think those are 2 separate reports. I would just like to add them as an amendment.
Yeah. And these 2 networks are quite separate from each other. They're not designed to be necessarily one informing the other. The one is studying one creek, the other one studying the other creek. Is that correct?
That's how Golder has got it set up, yes. But for anyone who wants to come in and use that data, they're obviously can use the data, or they can add more wells, wherever they decide how they want to do the groundwater study.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
But
they're at will to synthesize the material from 2 separate installations. Yeah.
both
Good.
creeks have the potential to impact the groundwater, though. So that's why I think it's important that we include everything that's been done.
Okay. Any other general comments before we go to recommendation 1?
I'll move
Okay.
staff rec for recommendation number 1.
All right. So this is that council approve, and this is for a study of groundwater in East Exshaw. Discussion.
You said, Mr. Chairman, you said East Exshaw, but it doesn't say East Exshaw on this,
It's the hamlet,
in the first recommendation. It says the whole hamlet.
the whole hamlet, yeah.
So is that what we're asking for?
Yes, the
is,
hamlet is confined basically to the Exshaw aquifer or the Exshaw Creek aquifer. Hamlet boundaries, future development might go into the Jura Creek boundaries. But I think it reads well enough the way it is. I'm hoping you do all do
Okay.
too. Eric?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I'm just, sorry, I'm just confused under the financial implications. Council's not considering the funding requirements at this time, the RFP requirements. Does that mean that, how does this work? How do we pay? Do we pay for this RFP? And if so, how? And who decides how much it is?
A very good question.
The RF through the chair, the RFP will go out. We'll have proponents from other engineering firms who are expertise in hydrogeology and hydrology, and they will come back with a cost, and we'll bring that costing forward.
They'll come back with a cost to do the RFP.
Yes.
Yeah,
Not
but
the
that's
RFP,
not your
actually,
question, Eric.
yes.
Your question, as I understood it, was who's paying for it? Is it
Yeah.
being paid for under the flood program or being paid for through general taxation in the MD?
Well, that too, both parts of that question, it looked to me almost like we're writing a blank check here, and I'm not happy about that, but perhaps that's not what we're doing. But yeah, ultimately, I mean, you don't normally have costs for bids. People bid, and if they don't get it, they're SOL, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Rob, have you got any answers to Eric's questions that haven't been mentioned?
No, it's not grant. It would not be funded by grants. It would be taxpayer dollars paying for it. You will have that decision to make if all the other recommendations are passed by council to bring it back on August the 24th. You'll be able to review the selected one that we think is the best proposal, and that will come with a price or cost, and then council will make that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Rob, you had your hand up before. Did you have another question?
Yes, you just need to add under recommendation number 1 after the word Exshaw as amended.
Right.
Okay. All right. I think I saw your hand up, Paul Clark.
I didn't have my hand up, but thank
Sure.
you. It must have been telepathic. With respect to the Eric's question, there's two costs. One is to prepare the request for proposal and use the consultants that Rob has mentioned to help us make sure that this is a reasonable request for proposal and has got everything in it. That's what I heard from Rob. And you have already done that. I believe that that's paid out of general revenues. When it comes to the actual proposal and the cost of the proposal, that, as you pointed out, Rob, that would come up to make a decision on whether we go forward on that or not. I suspect it's going to be a large number, but I'm going to leave it to the process to find that out.
Okay. Good. Any other questions? So we are looking at a request for proposals. They will go out to various qualified engineering companies with hydrologists, and it will come back as proposals. And from those proposals, we would select our go forward position. That's the knowledge in those proposals. Okay, so we're not committing ourselves to a particular study.
You are not, and if you look at the rest of the recommendations that administration will bring back what we believe is the successful bid, and council will approve that bid or not approve it, we'll be considering.
Okay. That's understood. Going to call a question unless there's no more comments. Do I have a mover?
I do.
I have it from Lisa. Calling the question. All in favor? Clear hands, please. Eric, I see. Paul, I see. Lisa, I see. Paul Clark, I see. And myself. That is 5-0 carried motion of council.
I'll move the second one, Mr. Chair, and I have a question.
The second one is recognized. This is for council to direct. Paul, your explanation.
Yeah, so who decides who's qualified to do this? You says qualified engineering firms.
Mhm.
And would this not just go out on the Muni site?
Yes.
And then, so is that the right terminology there, to qualified engineering firms? Because administration to send it to qualified engineering firms, and then who decides that they're qualified?
Well, they have to be qualified. It's in the RFP already. I think that's just to put it onto the proper provincial site, and that any qualified engineering firm would then apply for it, or then would make a submission.
Okay, so like I've been involved in quite a few of these, you know, and sometimes you've got general service agreements. Sometimes you have pre-qualified firms. And it's just, I find the terminology in here a little cumbersome. What's the name of the municipal site? Is it Muni Mall?
Yeah, we don't even use Muni Mall anymore. It's another site. But yeah, I can't, the name escapes me right now, but it's where we send all of our contracts for construction work or studies such as this.
And that's the intent here.
Totally the intent. We want, the administration is not picking who to send it to.
Okay, as long as that's understood and it's on the record that that is not the case, it will be posted for all engineering firms to be able to have an opportunity to submit a proposal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Paul Clark.
Yeah, the typical process, Mr. Chairman, in my experience, is to put the terms of reference out to the number of firms and then create a short list to those that we think are the best qualified. And that's so otherwise administration or whoever helps administration will have to review 20 proposals. That's going to be very time consuming. So I So I don't have any problem with the wording. I just letting you know what the what I think the process should be is that once we get the terms of reference from a bunch of engineering firms that in order to handle all this information, that administration prepare a short list for council with their recommendation.
So, Mr. Chair, that is different than what administration just explained the process to be. So, like, there's two avenues that you do this. One is you have a list of pre-qualified firms or pre-qualified contractors. And the other one is that you put it out as a general cattle call. And I appreciate if you do that, then you could get a lot of submissions. But I would hate to see us do this and not give a number of qualified engineering firms the opportunity to bid on it, rather than just a short list of pre-qualified engineering firms. And what I heard our administration say is we're doing a general cattle call.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. But Paul Clark, have you got any response to that?
I do.
We could get a lot of responses, Paul.
Rob's
yeah.
got a hand up. Rob's got his hand up.
Okay, Rob, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Chair, when we did the facility assessment study, we had 15 submissions. If you turn to page 25 in your agenda, we actually have a scoring system, which we actually very similar to the one that we used for the facility evaluation project, and it worked very well with the group of us going through and scoring them. And in fact, they almost lined up perfectly with everybody's scoring. So I'm quite pleased that we can use this scoring sheet, and it's been proven to work very well for us, especially if we have a lot of applications.
Well, that's good news. Okay, thanks, Rob. You answered my question. I have no concerns then.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to suggest now I have a motion on the floor. A discussion has taken place. I'm going to call the question. Not hearing any problems with that. Calling the question. All in favor of item 2, recommendation 2. Paul, Ryan, Lisa, Eric, Paul Clark. Are you voting?
Yeah. No, I'm not voting. Yeah. No, I don't think anybody's made a motion yet.
Yes.
I did, yeah.
Motion has been called. Lisa has the
Did you?
motion.
No,
Yeah.
I have the motion,
Paul-
Mr. Chair.
All right, does yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Paul Ryan.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
fine. Yeah,
Fine, and I'm fine. So that's
we're
a carry
voting. Yeah.
of council. Moving now on to the third item, which is council to direct administration. All right, that's the next step in the process. Eric?
Moved.
Okay, I have it from Eric. It is staff recommendation. Discussion, floor is open. Rob Ellis.
I think instead of the word present the successful bid, it should be the recommended bid.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay. And the recommended bid is coming back for council's approval. Just adding that so any public members are aware of it. Okay, Lisa?
If I could speak to that, I understand where you're going with recommended, and I like that wording, but does that mean council will have the opportunity to look at all the bids, or like administration would recommend one, but then what would we have the recommended bid to compare to?
Through the chair, you wouldn't. You would just have a recommended bid. We received, we'll say, 10 bids, and this one met the criteria. It met the costing requirements that we've had, and this is a recommended bid. If council would want to see all of those, they can. And we can put the scoring in too, but then just extend the process.
You froze for a while there, maybe just on my TV. Is that how that's working?
Rob didn't freeze for me.
Yeah, and he did for me. So I missed part of that sentence, Rob.
Okay, we can just have a listing of all the ones we received and the scoring, and bring all the documents back for council to look at. or we can just move forward and say, this is our recommendation. We had X number, and this one may, or say, here's our top 3, and we picked this one because of X. We could easily do that. Maybe that's what you want to see, Councillor Roswell. We'll just pick the very best ones and say, from these ones, we collected 10, shortlisted X, and this was we think the recommended proponent you should choose. We can easily do that.
I think I would like to see that, and it would support the recommendation. I feel, because suggesting one that you're recommending, it's hard for council to agree with it unless we also understand what's been compared. If that makes sense.
Yes, with the proviso that some information is confidential and some is public, Lisa. So,
Yeah.
yeah, as long as you make a difference between those two polarities, then I think it can be easily managed by administration.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Clark.
Rob, are you going to have assistance from other consultants to evaluate these bids and do the scoring?
Yes, just one consultant, and that's our in-house consultant, Morrison Hirschfield. They are part of a group of 5 companies that are pre-selected to do other projects for us. But right now, we've used Morrison Hirschfield, their hydrogeologist, to review this document, and they are noted in the RFP as assisting administration in this review.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wondered if council is prepared to accept that without questioning and going back into the actual evaluation, going into their own evaluation of the reports that are submitted. So I'm concerned about that. If that happens, is that I'm putting my trust in administration to bring forward the results, because they've got their expertise plus the expertise of Marsh and Hirschfield.
Okay. I clearly understand what you said, Paul, but the floor is still open to discussion. I see Eric first and then Paul.
Well, I agree with what Paul Clark just said. I have no interest in looking over the shoulder of administration, trying to second guess their decisions on this. I'm not qualified to that, and frankly, I don't think any of us on council are. So I'm happy with what was intended here.
Okay, Paul Ryan.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, that council is responsible for looking after the public purse. And so administration, with the assistance of Morris Hirschfield, will make a recommendation, but council should not be prohibited from asking, why did you make that recommendation over that particular proposal?
Yeah.
They should have the opportunity. It can be done. It can be done in camera. I mean, I respect the fact that you're not going to release all the information because a lot of it's proprietary, and you're giving away how firms would cost their work, which creates a competition problem for them in the future. But council should not be prohibited from asking, why did you choose this one over that one?
I don't have any problem with that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good. The point I want to make at this point, because we're going to the third recommendation and finishing this item of business, is to remind everybody that there are 2 piezometers monitoring on Exshaw Creek. There are 3 piezometers measuring on Jura Creek. That is not a small number of piezometers. There are 7 active piezometers at the Francis Cook landfill. So we have information being taken through this freshet that will be useful and available to these studies. So it's not like we're getting started. As far as measurement is concerned, we are already started. Calling the question on item 3. Who has the motion?
I'll make the motion.
I have
Oh, sorry.
Councillor.
Yeah, and the motion was recommended bid,
Okay,
right?
staff
So
recommendation,
that should, be-
recommended bid. Yes, there was
I-
a
Yeah.
alteration to the wording.
I believe Eric already had the motion.
Linda, can you clarify that, please?
I have staff recommendation number 3 from Councillor Butters.
Okay, Councillor Butters has the motion already.
okay.
Thank you for your participation, but anything to say, Eric, before we call the question?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, calling the question, all in favor? I'll call them off. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It is unanimous motion of council. Thank you, Rob, for all the work that went into preparing this document. And it was, I'm pleased to see the involvement of the consultants in this question, because I think that definition is going to be one of the solutions to the future modifications. So we need professional assistance. Anybody need a break? Okay, I'm looking at the agenda. We are now moving from F to G1. G1 is a bylaw and it's a schedule. And with a schedule, we can amend it in 3 readings. Remember how this goes: first, second, permission for third reading and third reading. Jared, I believe this is your document. Would you like to introduce it? Good morning.
Yes, and good morning, everyone. So this is bylaw 1621, and it is to amend the fee schedule to align with the current practice of the MD, the de-accreditation of the MD to issue building permits, which occurred last March 1st of 2020. So basically, we're just updating the current planning services fee schedule to remove building permit fees from the document. So this is basically the closing administrative step to that process, which council undertook back in the spring of 2020. I'm available for any questions from council members.
Okay, thank you. Floor is open for questions. Lisa, I see your hand first, and Paul Clark.
I actually don't have any questions, and I'm happy to give first reading. Make the motion for first reading.
Recognize first reading. And Paul Clark, questions?
Just a question for Jared. What were the major changes to the without me comparing that to the last one, to the fee schedule?
Yeah, certainly, Paul. Basically, the last section from the fee schedule, you do have a redlined copy of the fee schedule as part of your package.
Okay.
Okay. But basically, the last section from the fee schedule for planning services was deleted because that section was entirely addressing the building permit fees.
So no other changes other than that. Sorry, I could go to the red line, but that's easier to ask you the question.
Yeah, no, certainly no problem. Yeah, there were no other changes that except for the building permit fees.
Okay.
Okay. So the schedule is with you. The motion is on the floor. Discussion is still open if there's any need. I'm going to close it at this point and call the question on the recommendation, which is staff recommendation. Calling the question for first reading. All in favor?
I think Lisa has already got that.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. 1, 2. Paul Ryan, I can't see your hand. 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Moving into second reading, do I have a motion for second reading? I have it from Paul Clark. Discussion is open on the floor. Not hearing any. Calling the question. Hands, please. I'll count them off. 1, 2, 3, Paul 4, and myself 5. Permission for third is requested. I have it from Eric. And Eric, the floor is open for discussion on permission. Hearing none.
Well,
Calling
I
the question.
could recite Hiawatha, but I won't. Thank you. Go ahead.
Later in the evening. All right, let's take a look at this one. All in favor of permission? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now for the last third reading.
I'll move it.
Okay, I have it from Paul Ryan. Calling the question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a unanimous motion of council. And we're moving on now to H1. And H1 is a reduction of a utility bill, page 39. This one, I believe, is yours, Shayna.
Yes, it is. Good morning. So today, administration is asking that council decline the attached request regarding the reduction in user fees for Lot 5, Block 2, Plan 8170HX. The leak, there was a reported leak or trying to find the right word. Suspected leak at the property due to the high volume of water consumption that went through. I believe the property owner has subsequently from the request found a leak on their side of the line that requires repair. They are asking that due to the circumstances of COVID-19 and low occupancy at the hotel, they're having some financial hardships and are asking for a reduction in the amount owing. Typically, this is not awarded to utility payers that have a leak on their side of the line, as it is a user pay full cost recovery program for the water and wastewater systems.
Okay, so we have the item before you, and there's discussion at this point. Paul Ryan.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So I guess my question here is, that water that was leaking, does the MD pay a fee for that water as well?
Yes, we get billed by the town of Canmore for this water.
So is the town of Canmore prepared to forgive our costs?
That has not been requested, but I would say the answer would be no.
That would be my sense as well. Depending on if the leak was on the MD side of the line, property line, we'd have to pay for it anyway.
Correct.
Yeah, but we are paying for that water, even
Correct.
though it's leaking on the property owner side of the property line.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. I think that, oh, Lisa, okay, I see your hand barely, but I can see your pencil.
Yeah. I would go ahead and make the motion for staff recommendation to decline. I understand where administration is coming from, and no matter what, this water still needs to be paid for. And I guess from the perspective of the owner, the fact that they weren't even sure at the time of writing their letter that there was a leak, it just said there might be a leak. It's still possible this water was used by people in the hotel or motel, and yeah, I'm supportive of staff recommendation.
Yes, my position, as unfortunate as the leak is, it is on the ratepayer side of the question, and to put that cost onto the general cost for the full cost recovery program would be a mistake. So we can't be unfair to the group. We have to deal with the realities, and unfortunately the owner of the properties is responsible for that cost. So calling question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Moving on to H2, which is a request to return building permits. And this one, I believe, is yours, Jared. Would you like to introduce?
Yes, it is.
H2?
Yes, certainly. So this inquiry comes from a resident who is requesting the return of his building permit deposit of $500. The original building permit for the property, so it's lot 13, block 7, plan 1510262. It was issued on June 22nd of 2017 for the construction of an exterior deck with a pergola. According to the planning fee schedule, the MD requires a $500 security deposit for building permits issued for decks and other structures. So by June 2018, the project was not completed. A permit renewal application was not received, and the building permit subsequently expired on June 23rd, 2018. Now, Part 2 of the building permit lists conditions which state that when the construction project is complete and the final occupancy inspection occurs, then the $500 deposit would be returned. The issuance of the occupancy permit never occurred as the permit expired prior to the final inspection. Now, with Building Permit Bylaw 0218, it states that failure to complete the construction as per the issued building permit with a subsequent occupancy approval permit being issued from the municipality results in the security deposit being forfeited by the provider. On March 1st, 2020, as I had said earlier on in this meeting, the MD of Bighorn's accreditation process to issue building permits was removed. Prior to accreditation removal, planning staff attempted multiple times to contact the applicant of this building permit for renewal of his building permit, indicating that communication would have to be received prior to February 28th, 2020, if the applicant wished to renew the permit. After this date, the applicant sent an email requesting renewal of the permit. However, the MD was no longer accredited to renew the permit because our accreditation had been completed, had been ceased. And therefore, the security deposit was deemed forfeited by administration, and the provider basically was no longer able to renew his permit with the MD and had to go through ASCA, which is the Alberta Safety Codes Authority. So staff's recommendation on this request to return the building permit deposit of $500 is to refuse the request. And I am open for questions or comments from council. Thank you.
So the floor is open for discussion. This is an issue that we have seen in the past, but not recently, I don't believe. Lisa.
So I have a harder time, I guess, accepting recommendation from administration to refuse this request. I understand that administration made many attempts to contact these residents and ask them to renew their building permit or give them a deadline to suggest for them to do so by. But at the same time, I understand the homeowner's perspective, because in all the communications I've read that are attached to the agenda, there is nowhere in there that indicates that the $500 deposit would be forfeited through the communications. I understand that was part of the development permit, but considering how we were no longer, sorry, let me start that again. Considering how we were switching from one system to a different system, I can understand the confusion from the homeowner's perspective, with not understanding that the deposit would be forfeited and not just go towards the renewal when they were ready to renew. Something else I wanted to point out was, I know the MD had a deadline of February 28th to renew. On February 29th, it looks like the resident asked if they would still be able to renew that, where the answer was no, it's too late. But I'm also hearing from Jared that it was actually March 1st was when it became too late. So to me, it looks like it was actually possible on February 29th for them to renew their permit. So That I don't know if that was communicated in the best of faith.
Okay, Jared?
Yeah, and just for clarity, so March 1st, 2020 was actually a Sunday. February
Okay.
29th was a Saturday, and February 28th was the last business day of the week, which was the Friday.
Okay, that's good clarity. I didn't go back to the calendar, but
That's okay. That's why we're all here.
yeah.
Taking a look at this, do I have a motion from council? Paul Clark.
Mr.
I'm not
Chairman,
making a motion, Mr. Chairman, but I just wanted to say that somewhere in the correspondence I read that the proponent decided to not go ahead with the pergola that they had originally intended. However, I sympathize with staff has gone through a lot of time and effort to help this person get a building permit on time. And I mean, this is back to 2017. They had lots of time to renew their permit. So I'll make the motion to staff rec.
Your motion is recognized, but Eric Butters has his hand up.
yeah,
Eric?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the motion to decline, and I refer to page 75. In this 1.5 years, no renewal application was received for your building permit. During the accreditation transition process, the MD attempted many times to contact you to get you to do so. I think it's cost us a lot more than $500 in staff time. All the email traffic, there's pages of it. I'm sorry, I think that the staff rec is the way to go. I think we should decline the request.
Okay. Other discussion? Eric Paul Clark has the motion. It's before you. I'm going to call the question now. So all in favor of declining? Is it declining or refusing?
Staff rec.
Staff rec.
Staff rec.
Okay. Okay, in favor. Paul Clark, hands up. Eric, Paul, Ryan, myself, Lisa.
No, I'm not voting in favor of it.
Okay, opposed, one, not recorded, I take it. Do you want it recorded?
Yes, please. You can record
Okay,
it.
we will record it. Linda, did you get that instruction?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're on page 42 now, and we're moving deep into the package, which is to 86. When you get there, you will find out it's about vacancy on the Agricultural Services Board from a very long serving member that I must say, and having sat on that board, I can say that that serving member gave excellent service for a very long time. And it is much appreciated, and many of the board members have expressed their appreciation to that retiring member. Kim Madera, you're on the screen, and have you got anything to say about the report?
Nothing much to add, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we had a very long-standing member resign, unfortunately, and this report is before you as vacancies are filled by resolution of council.
Okay. And Kendra, how many meetings of the Ag Services Board would occur between now and October?
For between now and October, there's only one scheduled. There'd be September. So it's only one meeting between now and October. Yeah.
Okay. And how many council representatives do you have on your board?
I have 2 council representatives.
And how many public representatives?
4.
And you have 3 of those positions filled, and you're asking for the 4th to be filled.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Very good. Lisa?
Thank you, Reeve Cooper. I do question whether or not we need to go through this process to fill that one position for one meeting. Most of these boards have an alternate already identified. Is there an alternate for this board?
Yes, so yeah, you're correct. There are several ways to approach this. There is an alternate appointed to this board. So the alternate could just simply fill in for that one meeting. We also can still proceed with our meeting in September with this vacancy. So there's lots of options here. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I suppose I would think that that's what the alternate position was for, to fill an empty spot if that came up for a meeting. I know for other boards that I'm on, if somebody can't make it, then the alternate just steps into that role, rather than go through the process of looking through applications that were submitted 9 months ago. Maybe we should just call up the alternate.
Kendra, just one consideration I have to Lisa's questions, and by the way, I see your point of view very clearly, Lisa. But I'm worried about the legal aspects of the Ag Services Board. In other words, I believe they actually serve as our weed board or weed committee.
So a couple things. So I'll speak to Councillor Roswell's comment. So we did notice that there isn't anything in our bylaw that states that the alternate would step up for a vacancy. Our bylaw only states that vacancies shall be filled by resolution of council. So we did notice that could perhaps be something we address in the future. And then to answer your comment, Mr. Chairman, we do have a separate board actually to address appeals that come through. So a couple years ago, we have appointed a separate board that is made up of councillors not on the Ag Service Board that would hear appeals.
Okay, so yes, I do remember that now. Thank you for that clarification. I've got Eric Butters with his hand up. Yes.
Thank you. Frankly, I think Lisa, I agree with Lisa. We appointed an alternate. We got some splaining to do if we refuse to not include that person when we have a vacancy. So we have one meeting left. I think, quite frankly, the board can function well without a full slate. But nevertheless, we've told somebody that they're the alternate, and if it requires a motion of council, as it obviously does, fine, and we can have a motion of council. But it seems to me to be prudent to appoint someone who went to the trouble, showed an interest, went to trouble to apply, and then was designated an alternate to ignore him. I think would be poor form.
Yeah, and if the public may not be aware that in October following the election, so probably early November, we do assign both councillors and public members to each of the committees. So it is a process forthcoming and in the near future. So I'm going to go to Lisa.
Thank you. Further to Councillor Butters, I understand what Kendra is talking about in terms of the bylaw, but I don't know if this alternate needs to take the place of the vacancy. It's just the place of the seat of the vacant seat, not the position. They can still be at that meeting as an alternate, not as a bona fide board member, I suppose. But yeah, I agree with Eric. I don't think.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think it should continue to be the alternate, and that the new election, after the new board will, the council will fill that entire board as it sees fit.
Okay. Paul Clark or Paul Ryan, I haven't heard from you.
No, I'm satisfied to see the alternate step up for the one meeting that's left. And I agree with Councillor Butters. If we appoint someone as an alternate, I believe there's an expectation that they'll step up if there's a vacancy.
Okay. And to Kendra or Rob, is there any problem with what council is suggesting from administrative operations point of view?
None from me.
Rob?
No, though obviously we found that there's a weakness in that bylaw, so we'll just make an amendment to that, always coming into the future. If you want to, you can just say that you appoint the alternate to sit for that vacancy. Just put it in there, then it
Yeah,
falls what's in the
we're going
bylaw.
to make a motion that's explicit.
Yes, and if the alternate can't make it, then that's fine. There's no alternate to the alternate, so we'll just go along with that meeting as it is.
Eric?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we request the alternate attend the September meeting as an alternate.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is that clear enough?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion. Kendra, you have your hand up.
Yes, sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to take it down. Okay. Sorry. I neglected to fill you in with some information about this board and this vacancy. So the Ag Service Board, or the Agriculture Services and Environmental Advisory Board, does sit for applicants sit for 2-year terms. So it's not like our other boards where it's annual. This is when you are appointed for a 2-year term. So as our bylaw states currently, that they will be filled by resolution of council, and any person appointed shall fill the vacancy for the remainder of the balance of the member that resigned. So the member that resigned is in the middle of their term. So that means that we are requesting somebody to sit on this board for another 1.5 years. So just to clarify that it's more than just one meeting. It's our expiries are different. Like, so 2 of our public members expire in 2021 and 2 of our public members will expire in 2022.
Yes, not the members expire, but their positions.
Their position, the term.
When you get older, you're very sensitive about these kinds of things.
So it just makes it a little bit more complicated.
But that's an excellent addition to this. Go ahead, Lisa.
I think we can still move forward with Councillor Butters' motion. If we look at this in terms of the alternate is just filling that chair for that meeting, and then in November we can ask to have people apply for a 2-year term or the 1-year term at that point. I don't think we need to complicate this. Like it's just like any other committee meeting. If someone all of a sudden can't come to the meeting, you call the alternate. We have more advanced notice this time.
What's in back of my mind now is how many alternates do we have listed for Ag Services Board?
One.
So we're talking about a person, not a choice between persons. And as I understand it, we were appointing them to that chair. And what I heard from Kendra was that chair is now vacant for all the rest of this year and next year. So we're filling it for the whole space. Is that correct? Eric, it's your motion.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we're legally bound to fill it for the whole term, that's one thing. I still think that an alternate can be called in for one meeting, and at least I'm hoping that that's the case. And I think that would be the prudent way to go with this, is that we call in the alternate, see if he or she is available for the September meeting, and deal with the rest of it in November, whichever way we have to go. Appoint a new one for 1 year instead of 2, or appoint someone for 2, or the alternate may apply for who knows. But my motion is that we have the alternate for one meeting, and that's the September meeting.
Then I understand you. That's the motion, and you own it. So good for you.
As long as it's legal, as long as I'm not illegal with it, I'm happy.
Oh, I wouldn't let you go to the illegal side knowingly. Yeah. Or unknowingly, I guess I should say. Let's deal with the question at hand. Rob, any other comments?
No, what I would say though, add to Councillor Butters' motion, that you're appointing that board member for the September meeting. And I think you should put an explanation in there, and that's for everybody. And that a permanent member will be selected at the organizational meeting in October.
Okay. Is that a friendly amendment to you, Eric?
I'm fine with that, yeah.
It's a discussion on the amendment because I think that really does clarify it. Calling the question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for myself. Thank you, Kendra. We'll let you get back out in the sunshine in the fields. We have to stay in the meeting, Kendra. All right, let's take a look at the next part. We are now inquiries of administration, which is item I. And inquiries of administration coming around the room. I'll start with you, Paul Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Reeve. Yeah, so back to this letter that was sent by a community group. Actually 20 of the 24 landowners in South Exshaw. And it was sent to council. And I sent it to Robert right after I got it. And I'd like to understand the process because it's a letter. It's not a petition. It's got a lot of signatures on it. And I learned about this last Thursday, but only received the letter yesterday just before I sent it to Robert. So is that now treated as a formal complaint, Robert? And then how is it dealt with?
It'll go through bylaw services. But there'll be elements we can deal with this as far as what's the extent of our bylaws. However, anything that is dealing with really change, stop, or prohibit future commercial operations, that's a council discussion. I have no power to go through that. I can make recommendations to you, but administration would only be doing within the bounds of what it can with our existing bylaws.
So, okay, so when I looked at the land use for zoning for that and it's zoned public, commercial use is neither a permitted nor discretionary use listed in that zone. And in the past, council has stopped commercial operations from going into that residential area. And we have a area zone for that type of use just outside of the road that goes into South Exshaw on Diamond Drive. So what's the first step? It goes to bylaw. Bylaw looks for compliance. And then how will we know what's done with that?
Staff report.
We'll have to bring, for what we can, we'll bring back to your next council meeting, which is in August, of what has been proposed here and what we can and cannot do as admin. What we probably will do as admin. And then the larger question about prohibiting future commercial operations, that's a discussion for council.
So it's going to come back then. You're treating this as a complaint and you're going to bring back a staff report to council?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Going to Eric Butters next.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I'm not sure if this is even the right place to bring this up, but I had a call from residents on Richards Road, and that people with a lot of time in their hands these days are driving down Richards Road, which anybody's perfectly entitled to do, but Richards Road ends at private land. And so they're wondering if there could be signage at the turnoff of Highway 40 somehow indicating, I don't know if you can call it a dead end, because physically you can drive across private land, then across the Stony Reserve and get out the 1A highway. But at any rate, if there's any opportunities that a sign at the turnoff of Highway 40 on Richards Road might be useful in this regard. And I'll just leave it at that.
Have you got any wording that you're thinking of, Eric?
Buzz off, stay out, keep away, and no smiling.
Sorry I asked. But I
Not a through road. Would that help?
No through
well,
road?
I think, yeah, certainly not a through road from the point of view of legal access.
Okay.
Maybe no access to 1A highway might be a better approach. I don't know, but any rate, that's the. I'll just wait for some recommendation whether if anything should be done in this regard.
Okay, Rob, you had your hand up.
We can respond to. We can have a look at it. We'll talk to bylaw services and operations road department.
Thank you.
Eric, I haven't been out there for a long time, and when I come off the pavement and off the gravel, because I don't think all of that road is gravelled or paved, then I come onto a fence line that is not fenced, and I can get through on an unfenced access that isn't road allowance.
Yes, largely right. Firstly, the road, the Richards Road is paved all the way. Some of it's been recently repaved and some of it is 30 or more years old, but it is paved. And then it ends at a cattle guard that lets you onto someone else's private land, a very rough road, but nevertheless passable. And then you cross that for, I can't remember, it's a half mile or a mile, and then you go on to Stony Reserve.
Okay, but the road between the pavement and the Stony Reserve is not on road allowance.
No, it winds back and forth.
Okay, that's very important, I think, actually, Eric. Yeah, thank you.
And it's very, very rough. You know, at the 1A highway end, it's referred to as Spring Road. You come out on what they call Spring Road.
Yeah, I know where it is. Yeah.
And but the last, the southerly 2-3 miles is Stony Reserve.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get lost in there if you don't know where you're going, because there's oil company roads that are of a higher standard back and forth here and there all over the place. So following the best road, not necessarily the way to get through.
I'm not speaking for our Stony neighbors, but knowing them, I know that they are uncomfortable with traffic moving through the reserve.
Yeah.
Only because they've expressed that in the past. So our neighbors are affected like ourselves. And is that land where that road is that part of the fire smarting that was done or the logging that was done recently?
There was logging done. I don't know that the logging goes right up to Richards Road. There's some that's near Richards Road, some that's a long ways away from it, but there's been no logging that I'm aware of on that piece of private land. Quite frankly, it's somebody else's private land, so I don't go joyriding around on it. But I'm not aware of any timber having been harvested off that private piece.
And thank you for setting the right example, by the way. Appreciate it. All right, Paul Clark, any questions of administration?
No, I think I just earlier in the meeting, I just wanted an assessment of the comparison of the people that were affected by groundwater this year as opposed to last year. And so I think you answered that question for me. And so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that our public works and administration would have the clearest numbers on that. I think my numbers that I gave you were quite general. Are you talking about my numbers?
Yes.
Yeah. Public Works has a better accounting or a direct field observation of that, Rob?
They'll have a general idea, yes.
Yeah.
They'll know who's connected to the pipes and who's pumping.
Yeah.
And I can probably help you, Paul. I'm part of a troop of 3 volunteers who manage the sump pumps in the basement of the Exshaw Community Hall. We have 5 2-inch pumps in there. And we saw water levels lower this year than last year, but nonetheless, there were many times when all 5 of those 2-inch pumps were running.
Wow, thank you.
Lisa, last but not least. Actually, I'm last. So.
Last but not Lisa.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. I am just following up from 2 previous inquiries of administration about the potential for an emergency exit in Harvey Heights. And over the last 2 meetings, I guess I've talked about just barriers or a barricade that was possibly put in the area. It sounded like administration followed up with the community, and it was a different location than I was under the impression of, but I would still like to know where administration is at with that possible emergency exit in Harvey Heights.
Actually, Mr. Luca was up there with our roads foreman Mark Facette, but I think Bill can respond to that question.
Bill, are you there?
Yeah, I sure am. Yeah, we took a look at two possible options. First of all, there isn't an existing developed emergency access. There is currently a route, or there was a route through a utility right of way that separates the lower commercial highway properties and the higher residential properties. That route connected at the rear of the one commercial property, and that's where the blocks were placed, between that utility corridor and on the commercial property. So there isn't a formal emergency access developed right now. So if one were to be developed, there'd have to be negotiations with that private property owner. It is their land, to have an access easement on the property. There'd also be an option that would be an easier option to construct a road, but the access easement might be a different story. There's another option towards the west end that would parallel the work that was done in 2013 with the ditch or the berm at the very west end, and that would require provincial approvals and the design and construction of road. So there'd be costs and expenses to the MD to develop that. And then just as a whole, we'll have to discuss that process because it is not simple and it doesn't exist today.
Well, is it possible to bring this information back to next council meeting in an information report with some options or more details? And I would also like to confirm that you've been working with the community association, that the options you're looking at are options that that the community would also support.
Okay, Rob Ellis, hold on, Bill. Rob had his hand up. Yep, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, as Bill's pointed out, there wasn't actually emergency access. And if you see the correspondence from the president of the Harvey Heights CA, it sounds like they were assuming that there was an access there. And again, those concrete blocks are on private property, not on public. Councillor Roswell, what I was thinking of is passing this information along as part of the evacuation plan, and that will come back in a report that Stu Walkinshaw is doing for the emergency evac of all the hamlets that we have, not coming back as a specific item just for Harvey Heights.
I would be happy with that. I would like this to proceed in a timely manner, and I suppose when I look at how quickly Councillor Ryan's questions from a couple council meetings ago about public washrooms in Rome, they got answers and information to council very, very quickly, which I'm appreciating. But this is now the third council meeting where I've brought this up with no information coming back to council about this. And we're talking about an evacuation route. Should there be an emergency there tomorrow? I believe this is a pressing situation. And I don't think we should be waiting for any more council meetings to get more information on possible solutions.
Rob, if you comment?
No comment for that. There isn't an emergency evacuation route now. Community association thought there was, but there isn't. Mr. Luca has gone on the site a couple of times now with staff to have a look at what the original route was that we'd heard from Harvey Heights. They came back and said, no, the route, we think the route's over here. That has been evaluated by operations, and we'd like to bring it back as pass that information on to Mr. Walkinshaw as part of his evacuation plan for not only that hamlet, but all of them. It'll be a capital item regardless what council decides what to do, if they want to proceed with one or not.
Mhm.
I don't want to move on until this is sorted, but the question's been discussed. The answer I heard verbally was the options have been investigated and there are no alternate routes identified at this point from Harvey Heights. And that's not the only community that has evacuation issues. But what I heard, Lisa, was the answer is the route that was thought to exist isn't a formal route. It crosses private land. Did you hear something else? Like, I don't know what else you expect to hear back. That's what I'm having trouble with.
I suppose I expect to hear back possible options for an emergency evacuation route. I understand that something's being looked into for the whole MP right now, but Harvey Heights has a pretty significant population there to not have a secondary way out. Yeah, and I just want to make sure that it's first and foremost on our list here to make sure there's an emergency evacuation route.
Okay. I can't take it any further on either side, so I'm going to move on. Is there another topic?
That's all I have.
Okay, and I don't have any questions of administration today either. So we will move on to correspondence, which is items 1 through 4.
Move receive as information, Mr. Chair.
Okay, acknowledged. Calling the question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That takes us to the closed meeting of council. I make it that we have at least 3, if not 4 items I see on the chart. So we're going to move from this channel over to the next meeting. Rob, have you got something to say before we go?
Only that I'd like to invite Jared Castle to the annexation discussion onto closed session, please.
Yes, that would be appropriate. Let's leave this meeting. Oh, Lisa?
I'll make a motion to move to closed session.
Thank you, Lisa. I needed that because I forgot that. Appreciate your help. We're going to leave now, go to the next meeting. See you there.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Linda is here.
Okay, thank you.
And Linda, Councillor Ryan made the motion to come out of in camera.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Mr. Chair, you're live.
Live. Hi, everybody again. Closed session has finished. A number of items have been discussed, and there is one motion coming forward from it, and then a conversation in public with the CAO. So go ahead. Who's got the motion for Ghost Lake annexation? I think that's Paul Clark.
I can read it.
Okay.
The council support the uncontested annexation of 36.34 acres of land proposed by the Summer Village of Ghost Lake.
Okay. So these negotiations
Second
have been
motion.
ongoing,
Yes.
and they're now at a decision stage. The motion is yours, Paul Clark, is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Have you got any comments you need to make towards that motion?
No, just I really support making that motion. It's just as I said, the technicality that needs to be cleared up for the village. Doesn't affect DMD other than we lose $200 worth of taxes. So I'm fine
Okay.
with it.
Any comments from council? Hearing none, calling the question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's carried motion of council. Rob, council has discussed a consideration that involves you, and you are aware of the topic. And I will,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
sorry, I see Jared's hand up. I'm not sure he had something to say on this last one.
Jared?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to make sure that that was hectares and not acres. The
Okay.
36.34.
HAs?
It is hectares.
Yeah. I'm still in acres, to be honest with you. But I use Celsius. Does that help?
Thank you.
Okay, Jared, thank you for the correction. And we acknowledge the correction. Did we vote? No, we haven't voted. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. I will put on the public record that the negotiations have been with Ghost Lake over some period of time. It's been at the administrative and political level, and these discussions, from my viewpoint, were very cordial and very much a working environment and appreciative on both sides. So I recognize the other side's goodwill and ours. Rob, with regards to the other item of business, you and I will talk after this meeting. Okay, good. Is there any reason not to adjourn? It's a beautiful day out
Make
there.
a motion. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn is there. Paul Clark calling the question. All in